Hi, my name is Nivaas, Thanoo, and I worked in the Emergency Management Department under John Higginbotham at South Point Hospital, and my project title is Chemical Safety of Employees, Patients, and Visitors at South Point and Marymount Hospitals. Chemical spills. So thousands of chemical spills happen every year, and external releases impact a hospital by increasing the number of self-presenting patients, often with no notice given to the hospital itself. Internal spills impact the environment of care and safety of the hospital. Weapons of mass destruction are becoming deadlier each year, and they could be used at any time, as we've seen in the 9/11 attacks. And there are many different types of chemical WMDs that could be used at any time. Some examples of these WMDs are those of the G series, such as GA, GB, GD, GF, and VX. All of these are nerve agents that cause quick and painful deaths. Symptoms from all of the nerve agents include nausea, vomiting, and twitching. So, a history of some of the chemical spills in the past, such as Love Canal, which was used to bury 21,000 tons of toxic waste, and then a community was built on top of it, including public schools and houses, everything, and it led to plenty of birth defects, and it was just a disaster. And then there's also the Valley of the Drums, which was a 23-acre site used for toxic wastes, and it was named for the drums that stored the chemical waste. And then there's also the Bhopal disaster in Bhopal, India, which was a leakage of methyl isocyanate gas, resulting in the immediate deaths of 2,259 people and thousands of gas-related deaths. So, some background. Bhopal, India would eventually lead to the creation of the Emergency Planning and the Community Right to Know Act, or the EPCRA, in 1986. This established a local emergency planning committee, LEPC, which is governed by the State Emergency Response Commission, SERC. Facilities report to the Cuyahoga LEPC, which then reports to the Ohio SERC. The Superfund Act was also established in 1980 after the Love Canal and the Valley of Drum disasters. This act is a federal law that regulates the cleanup of sites that contain hazardous materials. The Superfund Amendments and Reauthorization Act, SARA, then revamped what was seen as a weak start to the program. So the purpose of my research project was to research whether facilities within a 4-mile radius of South Point Hospital, which also includes Marymount Hospital, have chemicals listed on OSHA's highly hazardous chemicals list. To make sure that the chemicals used internally are safe and compatible between each other and between different departments, to ensure that the hospitals are equipped with proper PPE in the event of a hazardous spill, to suggest alternative projects to be used in place of the hazardous ones as well. My hypothesis was that because the city of Warrensville Heights and the city of Garfield Heights, areas where both South Point and Marymount serve, are industrialized areas with major railroads running through the area, there is a high probability for highly hazardous chemicals being transported or used within the cities. While both hospitals have PPE, research will show a need for the PPE to be upgraded and procedures updated to protect the staff, patients, and visitors. So, methodology. The following will be considered during this research project. The researcher will compile chemical data received from Cuyahoga County for companies within a 4-mile radius of South Point Hospital. He will also compile chemical data received from departments within South Point and Marymount hospitals, determine chemicals that are dangerous by themselves or if accidentally mixed with another chemical used within a department or a support department, and examine the PPE at each hospital in order to confirm its efficiency against the more dangerous chemical threats. And so here's a 4-mile radius of South Point Hospital, and there were 54 companies located within this radius. And so here's a table, or a graph, showing that there were 8 external hazardous chemicals found, 3 at South Point and 1 at Marymount, out of a total of 26 chemicals checked externally, 77 checked at South Point, and 235 checked at Marymount. So these hazardous chemicals, the external hazardous chemicals, are anhydrous ammonia, hydrogen sulfide, formaldehyde, anhydrous hydrochloric acid, anhydrous hydrofluoric acid, hydrogen fluoride, hydrogen peroxide, nitric acid, and then the internal chemicals were chlorine, ethylene oxide, hydrogen peroxide, and tetrafluoroethylene. So nitric acid is highly corrosive to the eyes, skin, and mucous membranes. In contact with the skin results in a yellow hue due to a reaction with the keratin in the skin and painful burns. Inhalation of high concentrations of fumes can lead to severe respiratory irritation and delayed effects such as pulmonary edema, which can be fatal. Hydrogen fluoride, or hydrofluoric acid, upon contact with the skin, it can cause serious skin burns and possibly ulcers. Breathing in fumes from hydrofluoric acid can burn lung tissue, cause swelling, and cause fluid accumulation in the lungs, which is pulmonary edema and is also fatal. Formaldehyde. Common symptoms for low-level exposure include eye, nose, and throat irritation, as well as coughing, headaches, dizziness, and nausea. When exposed to formaldehyde in large quantities for large amounts of time, it is believed to be a human carcinogen, usually leading to cancer of the nose or throat. Hydrochloric acid. Highly corrosive upon contact with tissues, resulting in excessive burns, and these burns can be fatal through ingestion or inhalation of vapors. Vapors can also cause irritation to the eyes and can cause deep ulcers and severe skin burns. Hydrogen peroxide is an eye, skin, and mucous membrane irritant. Inhalation of large amounts of vapor can lead to extreme irritation of the nose and throat. Exposure for a short amount of time to the vapor or mist can lead to stinging and watering of the eyes. Ethylene oxide. Acute exposure can lead to respiratory irritation and lung injury, headache, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, shortness of breath, and cyanosis. Chronic exposure has been linked with cancer, reproductive effects, mutagenic changes, neurotoxicity, and sensitization. Hydrogen sulfide, a colorless gas with a strong odor of rotten eggs. It's toxic by inhalation. Its vapor density is 1.19. It has a specific gravity of 0.916 at negative 76 degrees Fahrenheit, and its molecular weight is 34.08. Tetrafluoroethylene. Inhalation can lead to irritation of the respiratory system. Contact can be irritating, and it causes slight irritation upon contact with the eyes. Ammonia gas. It's a clear, colorless gas. It's generally non-inflammable, but burns with certain vapor concentration limits and strong ignition. Vapors cause irritation of the eyes and respiratory tract. Contact can cause burns on skin and eyes, and is possibly fatal if inhaled. Chlorine gas. It is a greenish-yellow gas with a pungent, suffocating odor. Is toxic by inhalation, does not burn but supports combustion. It may be fatal if inhaled. Contact may cause burns to skin and eyes, and it may cause bronchitis or chronic lung conditions. So while there are many hazardous chemicals that are on the OSHA list of highly hazardous chemicals, there are also hazardous chemicals that are not on this list but should still be mentioned. One of these is sulfuric acid, and what you should do with this is you should avoid heat, water, and organic materials because it reacts hazardously with carbides, bromates, chromates, fulminates, picrates, and powdered metals as well. It also reacts with sodium hypochlorite to produce chlorine gas. Titanium tetrachloride. It is highly corrosive. It is an acute irritant to skin, eyes, mucous membranes, and the respiratory tract. It is capable of death or permanent injury from exposure during normal use. Short contact can lead to eye inflammation, which may result in corneal opacities. It reacts with moisture in the air and with water to form HCl, or hydrochloric acid. Sodium hypochlorite, or bleach, is household bleach is usually 3 to 6% and is usually in a 1 gallon bottle. And this is like your common household bleach. But when it's mixed with sodium hypochlorite and ammonia, it can form chlorine gas, which is extremely fatal and is also on the OSHA list of highly hazardous chemicals. And so in my research project, I also had to check the PPE, or personal protective equipment, at each hospital. So here's a compliance chart for the FR57 PAPR, or Powered Air Purifying Respirator. And as you can see, while it also protects you from anhydrous ammonia, formaldehyde, anhydrous hydrochloric acid, anhydrous hydrofluoric acid, hydrogen fluoride, and chlorine, it does not protect you from hydrogen sulfide, hydrogen peroxide, nitric acid, ethylene oxide, or tetrafluoroethylene. However, there is an upgrade kit called the RBE57 cartridge, which also protects you from the weapons of mass destruction. This protects you from everything except for hydrogen peroxide and nitric acid. So my results. If we go back to the initial purpose, it was to research whether external industries within a 4-mile radius of South Point had any hazardous chemicals. Also, to make sure that the chemicals within the departments are safe and compatible, and to ensure that the hospitals have adequate PPE for any possible spills. So basically, externally, there were 8 chemicals which are also listed on the OSHA Highly Hazardous Chemicals list that are being reported to the SERC by local industries. Internally, there are 3 hazardous chemicals at South Point and 1 hazardous chemical at Marymount on OSHA's list. Finally, the PPE is fairly adequate, protecting from all of the OSHA hazardous chemicals in the area, including excluding hydrogen peroxide and nitric acid. So, some recommendations. Due to the fact that there are highly hazardous chemicals being used within a 4-mile radius of the hospital, we should upgrade the 3M loose-fitting powered air purifying respirators, or PAPRs as I said before, to NIOSH Cap 1 rated PAPRs. What this means is that they can last for at least 15 minutes under toxic conditions exposed to those chemicals. And we should also make sure that the staff at the hospitals know how to recognize and treat victims of a chemical spill involving these chemicals, because as we saw with an external spill, the hospitals often receive no notice of what's happened. Also, because there are hazardous chemicals being used within the 2 hospitals, it is suggested that the staff is informed and knowledgeable on how to react to a chemical spill situation. It is also recommended that these departments find an alternate chemical or product from these hazardous ones. Finally, the proper PPE should be readily available in the event of an internal chemical spill. Also, due to the fact that the PPE of the hospitals protects and shields the effects of all but 2 of the local hazardous chemicals, the RBE57 upgrade kit is able to shield from more chemicals than the FR57 can. Therefore, it would be best for the hospitals to upgrade all of the FR57 cartridges with the RBE57 upgrade kit. To date, South Point Hospital has upgraded 50% of their PAPRs. So, in conclusion, as a result of this research project, it is apparent that there are hazardous chemicals in the local region that could pose a threat to the safety of the area. It has also been shown that while the PPE is adequate protection, it is not able to protect its users from everything in the area. Finally, while this project has incorporated many departments and areas of both hospitals, it has not been able to include all of them. Therefore, this is an ongoing study that will continue. It will be including more departments than were included in this study and will be researching more in depth about the incompatibilities of the internal chemicals. So I would like to thank my mentor, John Higginbotham, his college intern, James Kaminsky, Linda Pasick, Carol Weber, and I would also like to thank the Office of Civic Education Initiatives for giving me this opportunity to undergo this entire internship and to research this topic.